Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely, and with me today, of course, is co-founder of The Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of RT's talk show, Crosstalk. Well, it didn't take very long. After barely a month in office, the Biden administration has launched its first military operation. I don't think it's quite a World Cup and League record for a U.S. administration to launch a military attack. I think I think maybe the Clinton administration beat the Biden administration to the punch. Nonetheless, within about a month, the Biden administration has launched an attack, and it's against Syria, a country that is not great, impoverished, suffered horrifically under ever escalating US sanctions, under ever escalating US military pressure. And the ostensible justification presented by the US government is that the recent attack against a US military base in Kurdistan in Iraq was launched by militant groups that are linked to Iran. Quite why that justifies an attack on Syria is not explained, but as always happens when a military undertaking is done, it's the media are happy to sign off on this. Iran is obviously to blame, and so on. The extent of the casualties is a little unclear. There are some reports that maybe 17 people have been killed, and this is clear indication, I think, that the Biden administration really means to get seriously involved in Syria. If they wanted to hit back against militant groups that had targeted US forces in Iraq, you would have thought they'd attack somebody in Iraq. Nonetheless, they have not done so. They picked Syria. And let us also remember that not only is the US occupation in Syria illegal, they're not mandated by the UN Security Council, not invited by the Syrian government. Their occupation in Iraq is also illegal. The Iraqi parliament has already asked the US forces to leave. So we're back where we started from. US is in the Middle East and clearly plans to escalate its involvement in the Middle East. Peter, what's your take?
Well, it seems obvious to me is that they're doubling down on a failed strategy. I mean, they're just going to say, no, we didn't have enough resources. We didn't have enough bombs. We didn't pay off enough people. I mean, they learned nothing from this whatsoever. And your point of installing Iraq into this is very interesting because the Iraqis want the Americans to leave. And maybe that's why so-called militia groups associated with Iran. This could be a complete fiction for all I know. Maybe there's some truth into it. But forgive me for doubting everything that they have to say, okay? Right. Because they don't have a strategy. They're not wanted. American forces are not wanted, except for the corrupt regime in Kabul and in Baghdad. They just want the Americans to say it so they can keep sucking off of the largesse of American quote unquote aid, which doesn't get to anyone except for the pockets of officials. And then it's just recycled, laundered all through the Middle East. Who knows? It may end up back in the US for all we know, okay? So I think, Blinken may be behind this because he's still licking his wounds because it was a failure under him. It will continue to be a failure. And it's really quite interesting to me, again, not knowing what's going on behind the scenes, the amount of secrecy. See, there'll never be a leak under the Biden administration. There were leaks every day under the Trump administration. But I have to wonder what role Biden himself is involved in this, if any, whatsoever. And this justification, I mean, what is this, a signal to Iran? Is this a signal to Iraq? Is this a signal to Syria? Well, what's the point of this? I mean, it's very, very unclear. Again, it's the US in the Middle East without a strategy. And the strategy, from what I can tell, is to stay in the Middle East. I mean, that's about as,
that's
sophisticated as it is.
That's right. So to the extent that one can understand a strategy, it is to make life as unpleasant as possible for Russia. And that has been justified by US officials. What we're trying to do in Syria is to make it as painful as possible for Russia. And, the Syrian people be damned. I mean, who cares about them? What's interesting about all this is this phony, absolutely fraudulent rubbish that we've been listening to for the past several months, which is that the Biden administration wants to improve relations with Iran, that they somehow want to get back to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. No evidence for this whatsoever. Iran has no interest at all in returning to an agreement that would be worse than the previous one that they'd signed, and that they have absolutely no guarantees that the United States will adhere to, since there's a reasonable chance that Trump will be back in power within 4 years, and then we'll be back to again with withdrawal from the JCPOA. So there's no incentive whatsoever, but instead we have these phonies who go on, day after day, putting out this nonsense that the Biden administration is about to return to the JCPOA. So there is that. But you also have to think about this misery that the United States is inflicting on Syria. I mean, Syria has done nothing to the United States. Nothing. I mean, it's a small, impoverished country. And it's not, it's unable to use its own energy resources.
Agricultural resources.
Agriculture, exactly. And yet the United States feels it has a right to go on and on inflicting misery on Syria.
Well, Syria is not a security threat to anyone in the neighborhood at all. And if you look at its defense posture, that's exactly what it is: defense. Right. From the renewing this international proxy war. It's not a civil war, everyone, and that's never been a civil war. It's been an international proxy war. Right. And the US is on the side of such group as ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and other nasty groups like that. This would have been over long ago. But see, if you take the American strategy, Mr. Blinken, if you're watching, is that your strategy, and during the Obama administration, and now again under the Biden administration, is to see a black flag over Damascus. Now, who does that work out well for, except for terrorists, okay? Terrorists, known terrorists. They changed their uniforms, they changed their name, like 31 flavors of terrorism, but it's the same group of people. Okay, so that's what your plan is: a black flag over Damascus.
Right, and of course, it serves, of course, the United States, because it then provides a justification. We have to be in the Middle East because we're fighting ISIS. So I mean, here they are. They attack the Iranian militia in Syria, who are exactly fighting ISIS. They've been fighting ISIS for years. That's the people they attack. And then so we have to fight ISIS. Well, of course, the consequence if you have ISIS, if the black flag of ISIS flies over Damascus, you're going to have a massive flood of refugees. That's a problem for Europe. It's a problem for Turkey. Problem for Russia. So, the United States, okay, they provide, that's nice. We're just essentially shoveling garbage onto somebody else's front doorstep.
Well, see, the thing is that there was never any Al-Qaeda, any ISIS in Iraq. There was no ISIS or Al-Qaeda in Syria. But when there's American intervention, guess who shows up, George? That's like American military presence in the region is oxygen for these people, oxygen for them to, because the illegal military presence in the region is a reason for ISIS and Al-Qaeda to exist.
Right.
And, and this is this kind of, who knows, this nefarious thing. It keeps the gig going, okay? It keeps the grift going.
Right. Right.
And you can't convince me that the U.S. military doesn't understand that. I mean, if they're not there, who are supposed to fight? I mean, damn it, where are they? Let's raid them.
Well, of course, they use ISIS very cynically because they also collude with ISIS. They, help, provide arms to ISIS. We know this. I mean, there's an ample record of this, that they were happy to see ISIS grow and arm ISIS in order to overthrow Bashar al-Assad in Syria. They do this, and they're doing it now. I mean, ISIS is suddenly, ISIS was defeated a couple of years ago. And then as the US starts increasing its presence in Syria, whoa, ISIS is suddenly flourishing. So kills two birds with one stone. It provides a justification for continued US military presence, and it destabilizes the Middle East and gets rid of leaders that the United States doesn't like, namely Bashar al-Assad, who again, the only people who really hate Bashar al-Assad is Israel. What has Bashar al-Assad done to Washington? Nothing.
Here again, the United States wants to absolutely crush, destroy, and have regime change in one of the last, if not the last, secular regime in the region. Isn't that remarkable? Isn't that remarkable? And then you're backing Sisi in Egypt. And go to antiwar.com. Excellent article on how it's become a dystopia, a authoritarian dystopia. And the U.S. government, the U.S. taxpayer is paying for it. Right. I want to go back because I got a lot of pushback, and I want to be very clear, is that the killing of Soleimani was a huge mistake because Al-Qaeda and ISIS feared Soleimani more than they fear the Americans, okay? He was the great terrorist exterminator of the Middle East. Right. And in the way the news reported it is just absolutely abhorrent and disgusting. If you really believe the scourge of Islamic terrorism is a scourge, an evil, then you should Soleimani you should commend and not take him out. Okay, it was so wrong, the whole circumstances behind that, and whoever told Trump, this is good, this is it's going to be big headlines, he's a big guy, you're going to come out like a dragon slayer and all that. Those were the adults in the room, George. Again, these adults are around. They really irritate me, and they're back. That's
right. That's exactly right. Because Iran has been fighting, with some ferocity against Al-Qaeda, and United States didn't want it. The United States did not want Al-Qaeda defeated in Syria. I'm going to repeat that again. The United States does not want Al-Qaeda and ISIS defeated in Syria because it wants to use Al-Qaeda and ISIS as a leverage against Damascus and against the Russians. Time and again, they've stepped in the war in Syria in order to save Al-Qaeda and ISIS. I mean, we know about every time Idlib, when there was a threat of an offensive against Idlib, Trump stepped in and said, well, if there's going to be a humanitarian disaster, we are going to save Idlib. This is it. This is what they're doing. And therefore, they didn't want Soleimani because he's fighting on the other side. He's fighting against Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And then here we have Israel, which has been bombing Syria on a regular basis. Again, why? Because they say, because Iran is using Syria, as transit. Well, maybe it is, but Iran needs its allies in the Middle East. And, because Iran is under threat and it needs its allies in Lebanon, it needs its allies in Syria, and it's not going to give them up. And it's, and that's the crazy thing. The more you threaten Iran, the more Iran is going to start relying on its allies in the region.
And anyone that has any common sense knows that. Anybody that knows anything about the region knows that. Let me put it into perspective for everyone here. Okay, one of the talking points is that Trump defeated the caliphate. It's factually not true, but whatever. Okay, whatever. Because what's important is that the caliphate was destroyed. That's all I care about. If Trump wants to take credit for it, that's fine. But I'll tell you who did. It was the Russian Air Force. Right. With 20 planes in 6 weeks. Let me repeat that. 20 planes during a 6-week period. Think of all the years That proxy war was going on. And then in September 2015, Vladimir Putin at the United Nations General Assembly announced that on behalf of the Syrian government, Russia is being invaded to confront and destroy an outside threat. Okay, and that was ISIS, Al Qaeda, and all the other 31 flavors of terrorism there. Right. And so, let's put it, just think about that, everyone here. 20 planes. No, those were a lot of flights for those 20 planes, and then it did. And then they left. Primarily, the Russian footprint in Syria is very small right now because the Russian military doesn't have money to waste, okay? They were told what the mission was. Here is where they are. These are the people. Go out and destroy all of them. Right. And they did a really good job.
Right, but Idlib survived, and Idlib is a real problem. I mean, it prevents...
Because that's much more internationalized. Yeah, there's the Turks are involved there. The Americans are involved there. It's a lot more complicated. And unfortunately, it hasn't been cleared. But see, what they've done is they've created an intentional frozen conflict, okay? And not because... It's like northeastern Syria and Idlib have something in common. They're like pieces on the chessboard, and you're waiting to move them. They have no inherent value in and of themselves, okay? But it's this leverage of what you want to do with them. I mean, when Trump came and said, we're going to take the oil, it was like, that was like the 6th or 7th or 20th explanation of why they're there. Oh, it's about the oil now, okay?
Yeah. So that's very funny. Yeah, because you get this, the Biden people who leak stories to the New York Times saying, well, we really don't like that rationale taking the oil. No, that's not America's way. No, that would be illegal. That's a violation of international law. No, that's Trump, not us. What's our rationale? Yeah, we're fighting ISIS. That's it. That's what we're doing. Yeah, we're fighting ISIS. Yeah. So you're fighting ISIS by attacking and killing the people who are fighting ISIS. Okay, that sounds like a strategy. That should work. I mean, it's like they're coming up, as you said, they're just coming up with new rationales for a continued military presence. And now, I suppose they just say we're going to hold this oil just so that Bashar al-Assad cannot essentially retain his government. He cannot feed his people, just in order to cause as much misery as possible on them.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the reason that they're protecting transgender children. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and there have been a variety of stories along those lines. That Bashar al-Assad is in with the sort of white nationalists. The Interceptors run a few of those stories. He's with those guys. Maybe he's a friend of Marine Le Pen.
Well, the good thing is that Glenn Greenwald is left, so we have no reason to go to the Intercept again, ever. Okay. No, this is very dark foreboding because again, what we have is a repeat of the Obama-Biden administration of a intervention in search of a mission. Okay, and I think that if they want to cause trouble with the Russians, well, they'll get it. Okay, it's really quite obvious. It's very clear that Tehran and Moscow are determined that the Damascus government will not fall. Now, take note of that, Washington. Take note of that.
Right.
So what are you willing to exert to get your outcome? Because whatever you're willing to exert can be equaled.
Right. No, that's a very important point, which is why all this talk about the JCPOA is so nonsensical. Because what they're asking from Iran is that it give up on the government in Damascus. Iran's not going to do that. Syria is far too important an ally for Iran. It's not going to abandon it. It's not going to return. There's just, there's no advantage to it to return to an agreement and abandon Syria. It's an existential matter for Iran. The JCPOA is not. So, again, America misjudged Iran's calculations.
And we haven't mentioned another actor, very important actor in all this is Hezbollah. Hezbollah is determined also that the Damascus will not fall. Right. And ask the Israelis during the border war. You don't want to mess with Hezbollah, okay, at all. Okay, and it's one of the things that's so misunderstood about the region when we talk about Iran is that they're looking for a bomb. No, they're not. There's no evidence that they are. They keep that in the focus because that's easy to understand. The real story there is that Iran has invested quite a bit of resources into short-range, medium-range, and long-range missiles. It can hit just about anything in the neighborhood right now with great accuracy, I would point out. And if you have these missiles in great enough number, you can overwhelm any system, okay? Again, I like to bring up, remember Aramco in Saudi Arabia. Whoever did that, you and I don't know who did that, okay? Whoever did that has quite a bit of technical expertise, okay? They hit precision targets, weren't looking to kill people. They were looking to show we can take infrastructure out with great ease, and you won't even be able to see us do it.
Right. No, that's exactly right. That's why this type of gamesmanship is so self-destructive, because ultimately Iran has these missiles. It has quite a sophisticated missile defense system that it's obtained from the Russians. So it won't be as easy to retaliate against Iran as before. It's like you can continuing a war for no purpose. I mean, here we're talking about America's economic decline. We're talking about the rise of China. I mean, those are big issues. Those are issues that America needs to address. But this makes absolutely no sense. So here we are, the Biden administration doing all the nonsense that previous administrations have done, which is getting bogged down in pointless wars in the Middle East. Which no one can even explain. Even remotely what.
Don't worry, George. Don't worry, they got the teaching transgender children card still to play.
That one's coming. Yes.
They're holding that one there.
That's
Let's look at it, everyone. If you're looking, let's look at it from Tehran's position. The West, particularly the United States, is not going to allow Iran to export its oil. Then why should anyone be able to export oil in the region?
Right.
Huh? We can go back to the tanker wars. Right. So, this is always this game of chicken. And the Iranians understand it better than anyone else. So, a tanker is suddenly hit, disabled, sunk. Do you go to war over that? How many tankers? 1, 3, 5? How many? I mean, see, it's brinkmanship. It's like, okay, it's your move. What are you going to do?
It's brinkmanship because ultimately, the United States has no other option other than invade. Are you really going to invade Iran? No, of course, it's ludicrous. So you can just go on lobbing missiles. Okay, Iran can play that game. Iran can also lobby missiles. I mean, if you're not really prepared to either invade or to use nuclear weapons, then you've got a pointless war on your hands in which you just go tit for tat with missiles.
You want to play tit for tat?
Right.
What about Aramco? Right. I mean, one morning you can wake up and it's gone. Right. Okay.
Right.
There's nothing out there that can defend against that, because what it is that these things, from what I understand, how it was explained to me, the missiles that hit the Aramco installations, they were like flying a few hundred feet off the ground. You can't see them. Okay, so they're just, going their merry way. Right. And you think of all of the tens and hundreds of billions of dollars the House of Saud has spent on military equipment that they don't even know how to use. They have to get mercenaries to do it for them. Okay, and they don't even know how to use it. Okay, I mean, that's Iran's ultimate card right there, because these regimes, their families, they buy labor to service them in every single sense. Okay, they don't know how to defend themselves. They pay people to do it, and of course, the arms makers make a mint off of this, sell it at a premium. I mean, it's good money, good for their share price here. But at the end of the day, if you want, if the metal's going to hit the road, I mean, you're looking at a house of cards. Really, literally a house of cards. United Arab Emirates, it can be, literally taken out. The whole damn thing, if you want to start a conflict.
Right, right. Well, that's it. But you have to think then, what exactly is Biden doing here? Now, Biden, when I say assume, wants to show the world that he is a tough guy. So he's somebody who is, he's, right in there. But remember when
I bet he'll be reading a card. I am a tough guy. Where's my
I'm a tough guy. When Trump launched his attack on Syria in April 2017, the media celebrated, now Trump became president today. So having attacked him for being a Russian stooge all this time, suddenly Trump became a president. So, I think, that's something that Biden no doubt sees that there's a kind of a nice upside for him. He somehow becomes a wartime leader. I then suspect that this is, unlike in the case of Trump really didn't do anything after it, that this is preliminary to further entanglements in Syria. And that's of a piece with their having moved forces into Syria from Iraq. They're building another base in Syria. So unlike Trump, I think Biden will get more and more immersed in Syria.
I just have to wonder, and I suppose this is really going way out there, because I just have no faith in this Blinken and Sullivan characters, and the other people. Victoria Nuland. I mean, do they have a grand strategy? I mean, is doing something in Syria, thinking about 3 or 4 moves down the line when it has to do with Iran and Iraq and all that? I just don't have the confidence in their ability
because
at all.
There is any kind of a strategy. It's like what was the Obama strategy? The Obama strategy, they seized on the Arab Spring. In order to topple governments that the United States didn't like. They thought, okay, well, we're going to use this, and then what? You had the Libya, you got Syria, you got Yemen. That's the legacy of Obama. But there was no strategy other than, let's exploit this and see what comes up. Yeah, it was an absolute fiasco. So, you ask, well, what does Biden want? Well, I think they just want to do this regime change. It seems to be something in the Democrats' DNA that they just can't let go of regime change.
Well, I would go further. I think it's just part of the foreign policy blob, as Ben Rhodes coined. Yes. No, I just think it's because there's a lack of imagination, and it's one theme that you and I have really spoken about almost in every single of our videos on geopolitics, is that this is all about Washington's demand to maintain hegemony, or the belief that they have hegemony. I think that hegemony is very much challenged, and they know it's being challenged. Right. And this is why they're pushing back. They're just pushing back at anything that could we have to make a separation here. These are not security threats to the United States, right. Not even security really threats to its allies either, but it is a threat to hegemony. And that's the difference here, because the foreign policy establishment cannot accept negotiating American power relative around the world. They will not do that. That is something forbidden, okay? And that's why they revert to the military all of the time. Because if you were to go into some kind of managed security arrangements, that would take a lot of negotiation. And you know what? Most importantly, George, it would take good faith. That doesn't exist either.
I mean, for them, it's like it's more not about victory. It's trying to deny somebody else victory. It's about trying to make make other people suffer. So I mean, great powers don't go to war, because if you go to war, you stop being a great power. I mean, so that's why it's not a great idea. Hegemony. How do you retain hegemony if you're bogged down in Syria and you're bogged down in Iraq? I mean, you don't maintain any hegemony. So all you can do is, well, let's make life as miserable as possible for the Syrians. Let's make life as miserable as possible for the Iraqis. That's not a strategy. That's just simply, just cussedness. Let's just, make other people suffer.
Well, I mean, it is a strategy in a very perverse way, because it's a strategy not knowing what else to do. You're right. I mean, what does victory mean? It's hard to determine. I mean, they've given up on that. Okay, how many? It's been 20 years, and they've had almost like 20 commanders in Afghanistan. I mean, it's just another medal they put on their chest and add to their pension so they can go and work as a contractor. Okay, they don't go there to win the war, to end the war. It's just that as part of your resume, I did a tour over in Afghanistan. Okay, now I'm working for so and so and making $1 billion a year. I mean, that's the perversity of it all. Okay, the perversity of it is just to keep it going.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's a very strange thing because, you know, we're back in the 1950s and 60s. The European powers realized that these colonial wars, you know, they go on forever. So let's just end them. I mean, you know, how long are we going to go on fighting in Africa? I mean, you know, decades and decades.
And they learned the longer you stay, the higher price that you pay.
Yeah.
Who learned that the most? The Portuguese. Yeah. A lot of people don't know that, but they're one of the last holdouts. Okay, right. And they took a shellacking for staying so long.
That's right. That's exactly. Just fighting these pointless wars. You know, just as though you can retain. Oh well, look, you know, Portugal still has an empire. So yeah, it seems to be the United States. You know, I guess you know the American people put up with it. I mean, it's amazing they put up with 20 years of a war in Afghanistan.
Yeah, but you know, it's something I learned from Crosstalk, George, is that I never took my eye off of Yemen. We did a lot of program on some, but I tried to keep my eye on Afghanistan and Iraq, but people simply weren't interested because they're not told that it's a problem worthy of discussion. So this completely drops out of the headlines. Right. And then you have lower middle class boys and girls killed, you know, I mean, thank goodness for antiwar.com. They keep a track of all of the deaths. Right. Okay, in these foreign wars. Right. Okay, and actually, it's really quite touching what towns they come from, their families, friends, and all. It's really quite touching. It's really a major.
But that's the problem with if you have a professional army, because a professional army means it doesn't affect most people. The way Vietnam was a problem, you had national service then, so people really got very upset about the extent of Vietnam.
You actually had senators' sons.
Yeah. That caused a lot of indignation. Now, I mean, just a professional. Hey, you paid for this, so you know, the hell with you. You know, we don't care. Despite all the phony patriotism and you know so on, but ultimately, no one.
And on top of it, I'm going to make up some numbers here, so please don't fact check me. But I mean, there's like 2,500 troops in Iraq. And but there's like 5,000, 10,000 contractors. Same thing in Afghanistan. Okay, right. I mean, Tucker Carlson really made me angry when he had Eric Prince on. Right. Eric Prince is having his solution about, and actually the solution is make me really rich. Okay, I'll take care of these for you, right. And just I'll send you the check. Okay, the bill to be paid, which would be huge, and he would just have his private contractors, you know, as mercenaries. Okay, so and that's another very important element that people.
With a nice markup. So you know, everybody makes money. The contractors make money, and these various corrupt government officials in these colonial outposts to make money, they get a slice of the action.
And then you get American troops that are, some of them are National Guard that have been brought in, and they're paid a couple thousand, less than a couple $1,000s a month, put their lives on the line when they have contractors that are making 10 grand a month or even more. Okay,
that's right. Well, we will of course be maintaining our laser-like focus on the doings of the Biden administration in the Middle East and elsewhere. Remember, we are now on Rumble, so please look us up on Rumble. And remember, also, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.